Good day, salam, adab, shalom, namaste, viewers, listeners. This is Ayesha Siddiqa with Neighbors Talking for Naya Daur TV. Uh, I have with me today Professor Shahla Haeri, who's a pioneer of Iranian anthropology. Not just Iranian anthropology, she has done cutting edge ethnographic research on Pakistan and Iran as well. She's author of three books, uh, groundbreaking work on law of desire, muta marriage in Iran, also No Shame for the Sun, which is on women in Pakistan, working women in Pakistan, and then her latest book, which is The Unforgettable Queens of Islam. And for as for her introduction, her third book, has a chapter on Benazir Bhutto, and what was she in the larger scheme of things, inheritance, rulership, and all these issues that one needs to really look into. So today, I am not going to talk to her about women in particular, but women in Iran. Uh, this is neighborhood talking. So we need to know, South Asia needs to know what is happening next door in Iran. And by the way, one of Shahla's introduction is that she has lived for like 3-4 years in Pakistan. So she's very familiar with Pakistan as well. So Shahla, welcome to the show. And let me, ask you the simplest thing to explain. What are the women in Iran doing at the moment?
Well, hello, Aisha, and salam alaikum. It's really a pleasure to be able to talk with a Pakistani friend. And I have to say, I miss not being in Pakistan, although last time I was there in 2016. Now, what women want in Iran, it actually has a long history. It's not something that just came about all of a sudden and out of nowhere. Iranian women have been um, demanded to be treated equally with their male citizens. Starting from the constitutional revolution of 1906, women demanded to have freedom, equality, and agency, or to be able to practice the agency more than they were allowed to use it. But then that didn't work out. And then it came to 1963 when they were given a chance to vote and to be elected. And that was confronted by huge opposition, particularly by Ayatollah Khomeini. Nonetheless, women did get a chance to vote and to be elected. Then we come to the revolution of 1979, and I want to stress the fact that that was not an Islamic revolution. It was a popular revolution, of
Okay.
which
Can
women
can can
were.
you can you quickly explain that?
Well, yes, yes. I want to just to say that people were from all backgrounds involved in these revolutions. All ethnicities, all religious minorities were involved in the revolutions because primarily what they felt was political restrictions. They were economically well off at that time, under the
Hmm.
Pahlavi regimes. But anyways, then due to a few, you know, issues and circumstances, most importantly, the taking of the hostages of the American embassy, then the religious group became more dominant, and eventually they consolidated power. And since then, from then on, women were obliged to wear scarf when appearing in public, which was okay. But one of the things that I want to mention here before we get to what's going on in Iran right now is that when I was in Pakistan, I observed that some women were wearing the scarf and some women did not have their scarves, but they were all very modestly dressed. But they had a beautiful shalwar kameez and dupatta, which allowed them to exercise their own taste, their own financial ability to really improvise on this beautiful dress, which at the same time was modest. But it was the choice that women had to wear or not to wear the scarf. But after the consolidation of the Islamic Republic in Iran, women lost that choice. They could not appear in public domain without wearing the veil. And initially, actually, given the fact that immediately there was a war going on between Iran and Iraq, many women, in fact, owned wearing the scarf, appropriated wearing the scarf, and appeared in the public domain in droves. In fact, one could say that veiling made women to be more visible in the public domain and work in the public domain. But then gradually it became too oppressive. Women just could not exercise their choice, their freedom of will, as their parents had done that. My grandmother wore the veil. My mother didn't. And
Hmm.
when we went out with my grandmother, she had her veil on, and we didn't. So people had the choice to wear the veil. But now, what triggered this last uh, protests and demonstrations was the fact that this young woman was unfairly arrested, and then God knows where she was taken. And of course, as you know, she was arrested by the morality police, and
Right,
I don't,
right,
and she was taken to a detention center. Nobody knows exactly where and how she was treated. And in 2 days, she went in coma. And then 5 days later, she was dead. So that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And people just thought enough is enough. And what is important in that we need to recognize is that how that reaction to her death galvanized not just women who objected to the oppression that they had felt for the past 43 years since the consolidation of power by the Islamic Republic, but men
right.
felt that enough was enough. The wives, their daughters, their sisters, their mothers were all being unfairly treated and prevented
I
from.
mean, I'm sure you saw that very painful video of the young girl's father dancing at her grave because he had promised her that when she got married, he would dance at her wedding. I mean, it was heartbreaking.
There were so many of those videos, Aisha. They're all heartbreaking. They're all heartbreaking. Young kids, young, beautiful, attractive women, men. I mean, I don't know whether to call them women or men. I mean, these are 17-year-old kids, boys and girls, just at the cusp, at the just beginning of their lives.
Shala, let's get back to this Iran question later. But let me ask you a question, which is more theoretical to do with freedom of women. Now, even in Pakistan, and you have lived there, and you have been in the middle of debate about women emancipation. When women say that wearing a veil makes them less visible, it empowers them. Now, what you're telling me is that this understanding later led to their political imprisonment. So, does one naturally lead one to the other? And can one say that, once I take the veil, that it will always remain my choice?
Well, I think choice is the operative word here. I think to wear or not to wear the veil does not necessarily lead one
Hmm.
to lose one's agency. If I am to decide to wear the veil, then it is my choice. And it doesn't, in fact, as I mentioned earlier on, as Iranian women did at the beginning of revolution, given what the ongoing war between Iran and Iraq, women owned that, started using that, and they appeared in public domain, and they were hired in many professions, in public, particularly in service domain. But the point is that if I am forced to wear the veil, that is where it becomes the problem. That is where as a woman, I just feel constrained. I feel that I am not respected as a citizen. I'm not respected as an active member of my society,
Hmm.
given the fact that I do not want to wear that. But as I said, if I were to wear that, if I want to wear that, so that's my choice, and I should be able to do it.
But what about when you are forced not to wear it?
Well, that is the problem too. No, I don't agree with that either. In fact, that
Right.
is another history of what happened in Iran, which we should, refer to. We should really,
Exactly.
yes, we should talk about that. In 1936, as part of modernizing Iran,
Right. Right.
the first Pahlavi Shah, Reza Shah, in fact made it mandatory for women to appear in public domain without their veils. That is a problem. Again, at that time, he perceived the woman's body as a site for progress, for modernization, and the women were forced not to wear that. In fact, I hear about the story about my grandmother who refused to, in fact, go to the streets or walk outside without a guard because she didn't want to take off her veil. So that's a problem too. And it again is a problem when the Islamic Republic perceives women's bodies as a site of upholding morality of societies or controlling women for whatever assumptions that they have. So in both cases, I am,
Hmm.
objecting to.
I'll hold my thought with a question that I have on, you know, rulers, their relationship with, with women. But that is a question which I'll ask you later. Let's go back to, situation in Iran. So, is it something you think that it's potentially something which can shake the regime, or the regime would be able to push it back as it has done before?
Well, it's really hard to predict, it seems, and I really don't think I'm in a position to predict that. But what I can do is to read what's happening in Iran
Yeah,
right now.
exactly.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, it seems that the state, and we have to understand the political structure in Iran when we talk about the state. We don't really have any of the. I mean, we do have, nominally the institutions of power. The judiciary, the presidency, and all that. But all the power is concentrated in the hands of one person, and then who controls the military, the other institutions in society. He has proved to be unwilling to listen to what people have to say. So, on the one hand, there is that part of what's going on in Iran. The state seems to have shown itself unwilling to listen to the people. On the other
Hmm.
hand, people have also shown that they are unwilling to give up their demands.
Right,
So
right.
it's hard to predict what's going to come of it. Of course, all the power. I mean, the means of power are concentrated in the hands of the Revolutionary Guard, the Basij, the plainclothes people, and you know, ideologically, the state controls the message. But what is happening in Iran is just telling us another story, and I don't know how and where it's going to end, or just what may come of it.
So, how widespread is it? I mean, is it certain cities, all cities, specific segments of the society? Where?
Well, this is what's interesting. I think what we see is the tip of the iceberg,
Okay.
because these are the expression of dissatisfactions that young people have felt, and they're just saying that enough is enough. We're not going to take it. But their families, many people in societies have been dissatisfied with how this state that claims to be religious has functioned politically, economically, militarily, financially, you name it. The economy in Iran is in shambles. Of course, we shouldn't forget the fact that Iran
Hmm.
has been under sanctions for many years. So that has put a strong pressure on Iran. But at the same time, we have to realize that the satisfactions is not just for that. It's not just
Right.
expressed in what we see, in demonstrations, but it just goes way deep in society.
I wonder how would you compare it with your time in Pakistan, and you have interviewed a lot of people, women there who were part of the Women Action Forum, who was central to the protests, while General Ziaul Haq was trying to bring change, bring Sharia law which affected women. So how do you compare that dissatisfaction of women in Pakistan, their movement, with what's happening in Iran?
Well, it's really hard to exactly compare that because the situation in both countries are quite different. Pakistan was under long-term colonial domination, which it allowed it a certain reflexivity, a certain understanding of what it needs or how or where it should direct its discontent. I was there actually just as Yaul Haq, uh, I mean, well, how should I say that? Died,
Okay.
yeah. But what impressed me with in Pakistan was, in fact, a certain level of freedom that they seem to have. Because I went to many conferences, many gatherings, but in Shirkat Gah, Orat Foundation, Asar, and I saw women expressing their views, what it seemed to me quite freely and also reflexively. That they just seem to understand uh, what has gone on in their societies and what they need and what women in Pakistan are going through. In Iran, we had the same thing, but soon after revolution, again, because of the war, women had to take a back seat. So they couldn't
Hmm,
really
hmm.
be as vocal as
Right, right.
as as uh, uh, what is the word for it? As vocal as they needed to be. So it's quite different. But now what's happening in Iran is that they have had this history of the past 43 years. And of course, I mean, seeing what's happening in the world, seeing where the society is headed, seeing the amazing corruption in the governing institutions, they're just now saying that enough is enough. So in the case of Pakistan was a little different because there seemed to have been a bit of a freedom that allowed
Hmm,
women
hmm.
to have some leeways, whereas in Iran for a long time women didn't have that. Not women, no other group had that. But then
Right, right.
gradually they were able to, just realize what's going on. And particularly, I think the triggering factor was the amazing corruption in
Hmm.
the governing institutions.
In a way, there is that difference between Pakistan and Iran because, interestingly, in Pakistan, Women Action Forum and the women's movement itself is often accused of being elite. Uh, so the working class women, the middle class, lower middle class women are considered more conservative than these set of women. Now, in Iran, I would like to ask you, what's the situation? I mean, is it a movement which resonates through different segments of the society, or is it
Well,
concentrated?
I think at this point it does, but let me just come back to making a comment about Women's Action Forum.
Right,
I have heard that accusation of Women's Action Forum. But I don't think it is really fair because if we look at the women's movement, the suffrage movement in America or in Europe, the majority of women, if not
right,
almost the overwhelming majority of women who spearheaded the change,
right,
were middle class women. So because they have greater opportunity, they have greater freedom, they don't have to worry all the time about making the ends meet. So I don't think that's a fair criticism of WAF. By the same token, I think in Iran, even if they were mostly middle class women, it would be a fair criticism. I don't think this what is going on in Iran right now. It's
right,
only uh, restricted and limited to middle class, upper middle class, better off, you know, um, uh, um, Iranians. And I want to mention that this is not an economic uprising in Iran. It's more of a civil disobedience. It's more of civil discontent that a large majority of people feel. So even if it sounds as if it is being headed, or it's at least initially started by more middle class families, I think at this point it is really overwhelming. And
Yeah,
as I
the
said,
the you choose the right word. It's a civil discontent, which is not just limited to cities. I mean, I realize that it is spread out in other areas, especially, for example, Iranian Balochistan, in Zahedan, areas like that, where uh, Maulvi Hamdullah, for example,
Abdul Hamid.
Abdul Hamid, sorry, Maulvi Abdul Hamid is challenging uh, the regime, and there are these questions being raised very gently about walayat faqih, especially when it kind of transforms into zulm.
That's right.
uh, so there is that. So yeah, that's definitely a different character to it. So
Absolutely, and that's what makes this latest uprising, because there have been uprising all throughout the Islamic Republic in Iran, but this last one is intersectional. It's there's ethnic diversity, it's class diversity, it's gender diversity. It's a very interesting, complex, intersectional uprising against a very oppressive, very corrupt system, which people perhaps misread as something purer, as something more genuine, as something more honest. None of it seems to have happened.
can I ask you a very basic question? I mean, at what point in Iran's modern history did a system which was expected to be more pure than the older system, when did you think it started to kind of turn towards being less accountable, more authoritarian, and then being purely authoritarian and very corrupt?
I mean, I haven't really been keeping the chronology of when and how and at what point exactly that moment of transformation happened. But you see, the seed of authoritarianism um, was uh, 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 planted at the very time that it was decided that a modern state should have one person as the Vilayat al-Faqih. The very seed of oppression, dictatorship, authoritarianism is there, and it makes it particularly poignant because it legitimates everything it does through some kind of religious sayings or hadith or this or that or the other, which then completely takes it out of the realm of um, the
Exactly.
law and the legislature, because there is no law that says what can or cannot be done, because everything you do, you can just find um, a way of legitimating in a as something sanctified, as something more sacred, and so not amenable to questions.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the fears of people, some of the people at least in Pakistan, who thought that when Imran Khan in Pakistan was constantly referring to the state of Medina, turning Pakistan into a state of Medina, that where will it end? Um, but going back to what's happening in Zahedan, the movement being more political and having different colors. Uh, I was recently reading this statement by the religious authority in Iran, and they're looking at the voices from Zahedan mainly as a Naqshbandi rising, putting it in a box, which I think, and you'd agree with me, that putting this movement in a box or different boxes is dangerous.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I actually do not know exactly what particular strand of Islam the religious you know, uh, the population or the religious leaders or Mulvi Abdul Hamid are pursuing in Zahedan. But the
There's
point is,
Sunnis.
but the
They are
point is,
Sunnis.
sorry,
They are Sunnis.
I know there are Sunnis. No, that's what I was going to say. That the point of it is that the state feels that because they're in majority, they can control and restrict the activities of the religious minorities in Iran the way that they have done it with all other form of minorities, the ethnic groups. And of course, women are not in minorities, but from their point of view, women are minors. They're not even intellectually as capable as presumably as men to be able to think and to conduct their own lives. So they have been very oppressive of what's going on in Zahedan. And it's not just through religion that they have felt the oppression. Again, it's economically they have been neglected. Constitutionally, they have been neglected. Legally, they have been neglected.
Being
So they,
right.
like many other factions in Iran, think enough is enough. So whatever strand of Sunni Islam they believe in, the point is that they have felt the oppression in their skin and flesh.
Now, since you're an anthropologist, let me ask you, address you as an anthropologist. Um, I mean, you've looked at the relationship of power and women. So, my question, my final question to you would be, what is it that power and authority feels is important to control women? You know, in a lot of places where systems become authoritarian, one of the first things they want to do is really control women. Why?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And let me just say, to paraphrase a comment made by a very interesting person, American person, who just one of the justices. He says the power's first instinct is to preserve power.
Right.
And for women, just think about I mean, this requires a huge conversations and really very reflexive study on that. But think about patriarchy. It's in the nature of patriarchal system to want to maintain and control women, and other men too, because patriarchy also oppresses many men who are not in the position of power. But there are gradations. So from the very beginning, what
Hmm.
preserves patriarchy is violence and fear and control. With violence towards
Hmm.
other minorities, most importantly women, because women are very, very powerful. Women are the ones who socialize, in whose um, lab men are being trained and socialized. In fact, let's just in this context make a reference to these amazing slogans that is now becoming
Yeah.
the representations, the message of Iranian uprising: women, life, freedom.
Freedom.
Zan,
Hmm.
Zendagi, Azadi.
Azadi.
In these three sentences, in these three words, you can
Words.
actually understand the entire dynamics of these movement in Iran, or this uprising in Iran, and then what has gone on to the people, to women particularly, who are the life givers, right?
Exactly.
Women
Zan,
are the
yeah,
life givers.
Zan Zindagi Azadi. It's beautiful. I mean,
It's
very
wonderful.
moving.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
And so in that sense, we understand why many patriarchal regimes are terrified of women, because women do have this inherent power, right?
Right.
They
Right.
are the life givers. They are the creators. So to
Right.
appropriate to
Right.
appropriate that, then you have to make women first of all realize that they are incapable of doing certain things, because many women, you know, themselves think that they are not capable of doing that, because they have been told all along that, it's men who can make decisions, men who can think. And much to their surprise, in the Islamic Republic, as soon as women, and in among the Taliban, as soon as women had a chance to really move into various directions and professions, they uh, their talents just blossomed. They became so well educated and
Ex-
talented and capable of doing things that frightened many men, because they generally believe that women are incapable of doing that. Intellectually, they are inferior to men. So then they had to just
yeah.
turn around and control them and push them back to the confinement of their homes. And then now women are saying that no more, we're just not going to have that.
Thank you, Dr. Shahla Haeri. 1979, Iran was there on the world map. A change was coming. And now again, it's on the world map. It's being noticed by its neighboring regions. It's being noticed by the world. people are watching very intently what's going to happen. And it's not about, an interference from outside, but people from within trying to take control of their lives and of their future. So we
May I
are really,
just I
we
just want to say that, I mean, you're totally right, and I like this issue to stay in public domain. And for that matter, I want to thank you for really giving it visibility and publicity in Pakistan, which I think Iran's neighboring countries, the regions, Iran's neighbors have to really pay more attention to what's going on inside the country.
certainly in Pakistan, in India, where there is a strange kind of a silence on this issue, I think we need to do more.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Professor Haeri, and hope to be in touch with you again. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Good to talk to you.